Here we are in London, and we've got a fabulous afternoon ahead of us because we've Tony de Meur and Bobby Valentino of the Fabulous Poodles.
Yeah, two fabulouses, I like that.
Or is that Fabuli?
I'll have to check my Latin primer.
For one night only is how it's billed. You have a special date, I don't know whether you call it a reformation, a reunion, a return, at Nell's Jazz and Blues in West London on the Friday the 15th of November.
Friday the 29th.
The 29th,
Yeah.
Okay. And but there is a warm-up as well, as far as I read, in Bath?
Yes, we've got Bath this coming Friday, on the 8th.
Friday the 8th, yeah.
So what spurred you into, apart from obviously money, fame, the group so what spurred you into coming together for this special occasion?
Well, in some ways, it kind of went back to I put together a compilation of some of my favourite stuff of the Poodles about over 20 years ago, and it was called His Master's Choice. And I happened to be playing it around my girlfriend's place, and she said, "God, these are really good songs." And I thought, yeah, they are. So I approached Cherry Red Records to do like an in-depth 3 CD, which covered the 3 albums that we made, plus a lot of demos and stuff for the fans, really, live stuff from New York. And yeah, and it's gone over very well. So we thought, hey, why don't we try and do a couple of gigs, see how it goes.
So is this the beginning of a new chapter or a closing of another?
Be nice.
Well, hopefully the beginning of something new. I can see no reason why because of the technology these days, it's much easier to make an album. You know, we can make an album in 3 weeks easily. And in the old days, you had to be signed up to a label, and it was more problematic. Whereas I think it's easier now.
And you both, from being, I guess the core time of the band was like a 5-year duration. Then you both went off and did your own individual things. So
yeah, it went and became funny.
But you had to acquire a different identity or persona. Was that deliberate? You became someone else. Ronnie Golden.
It was partly paranoia that I didn't want my ex-manager to know that I was working, because I was kind of paranoid about the whole thing, and also because Tony de Meur sounds more like a Vegas singer, you know. Caesar's Palace welcomes Tony de Meur. Feelings, nothing. You know, it didn't seem right. So I opted for the name of my best mate at school. His father had a friend called Ronnie Golden, who was a used car salesman, something like that. And I thought that's the kind of name I want to go for. So I stole that.
And also, it was very useful because he got paid twice for every gig. Because Ronnie Golden was a support act for the Fabulous Poodles.
On our last UK tour, I said, why don't we get Ronnie Golden? And said, who's that? I said, me. And sometimes the audience wouldn't even know that it was me, because I wore a hat and gaudy shirt and everything. And so I got paid twice.
So Bobby, you're on the fiddle, and so was he.
Boom.
Leave the jokes to me.
Yeah, I mean, he ended up as Ronnie Golden, the comedian. And I ended up as a session musician.
And Bobby, throughout you've retained your identity, your personality, your look, but you play with a wide range of people.
I can name drop till the cows come home.
I mean, from Bronski Beat to Bewitched. I mean,
Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Martin Offlin, Max Boyce,
Timmy
Rolf
Mallon.
Harris. I haven't done Tilly Man yet, but I have done Sinead and Des O'Connor. Must be one of the few musicians who's played with both the O'Connors. I went for a call from Tom.
I'm very impressed. I will now sleep with you.
I'll give you a 3, 2, 1. Anyway, so there is a common thread between your post-Poodles careers in the young ones.
Oh yeah, when I started out, I auditioned for the comic strip, which was in Raymond's Review Bar, and I got very friendly with Rick Mail and Aid and Alexi and all of them. And Rick calls me up one Sunday morning and he said, Ronnie, what are you doing later? And I said, well, no plans. He said, "Do you want to meet up in the King's Head in Islington?" I said, "Yeah, what's this about?" He said, "We're doing this series called The Young Ones," and he said, "You really like Buddy Holly, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I love him." He said, "Yeah." He said, "My brother Anthony loves him." He said, "I can't stand him. He's a nerd." He said, "I'm much more of a Elvis and Gene Vincent man." He said, so we've got this scene where Buddy Holly's crash landed head first through the ceiling of Mike's room, and basically he sings a few bars of this song he's written about living off insects for the last 21 years, and then the chords break and he goes head first through the floorboards, dies, and Alexei takes his guitar off him. "You won't want to do that, will you?" And I said, "Yeah, I will." And you can still see it. I think it's called the legendary Buddy Holly Young Ones performance.
It'll be on YouTube.
It was
somewhere.
great fun. It was huge fun.
And I ended up making the violin breaking noises on
On the single.
the Cliff Richard and the Young Ones remake of Living Doll. I think Aid says, "What happens next, Cliff?" And Cliff goes, "Oh, the instrumental break." "What should we break? The violin." So I made this sort of clinky, scrapey noise, and I added a sound effects record of breaking furniture, and that's the violin.
So no violins were harmed during the course of making that movie.
No, I mean, it wouldn't sound right. I mean, you've got to fake it. It wouldn't. If I actually broke a violin, it wouldn't sound like anything at all. I did have one smashed over my head when I was 8 years old.
So in retrospect, with the band in its existence for 5 years, do you think it got its due as a band that had its own sound, that had serious songs and serious musicians?
Only in America. Yeah.
Yes.
In America, they got it totally, and that's why we did sell a lot of records over there. We did some big TV shows. We did American Bandstand, and just loads of stuff, and everyone just saw us in this kind of history of British bands like the Kinks and the Who. Whereas over here, it was kind of it's an important market, but it's very small and it turns over very quickly. So you might be hip one month and then the next month you're not. Whereas in America, they've got a real kind of respect for the tradition of it.
Yeah, because I mean there was that point that you were one of the really big bands.
Well, yeah, I mean it was a short-lived thing, but because we did break up when we came back.
In the late 70s, the British New Wave in America was Joe Jackson, Dire Straits, and us. I mean, we found it astounding because the punk bands did nothing. They hated the Sex Pistols, and they just didn't. They didn't get it, and they didn't get the Clash or any of them. So we ended up just sort of. I think one tour we worked it out once. We did 78 gigs in 75 days.
Unbelievable. What I found also ironic is at one point Brian Lane, who of course manages the Prog Dinosaurs, so I love them, yes, but he managed you, kind of the new wave.
Well, the
sound.
story behind that is we were doing the Old Grey Whistle test with Talking Heads and someone else, I can't remember, and he happened to be Rick Wakeman was on as well. He was just chatting with Bob, and and Brian happened to video it, and he caught us on the end of the video, and he went, "Oh, I like them." We didn't have management, so we hooked up with him. Yeah.
And I mean, there were two other people that we should clearly name check. I mean, John Peel was certainly an advocate of yours.
He was very important
lovely.
in terms of us getting a record deal. He was so influential. It really helped. Yeah.
Mind you, it was Pie.
Yeah, but Pie. It's Max Bygraves, Discolonga Max. No, it was fun signing with probably the unhippest label in the country. But
so so were they nice as Pie as a record label?
It was quite strange. We got to America. We were signed to Epic in America, and the difference in approach was very, very noticeable. Yeah. I mean, they felt like real professionals. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, Pie were okay, but they were kind of locked into the past in a way that they tried to sign some kind of not very good punk bands to try and keep up, but it just didn't really work. They didn't quite get it. So we were really a hard band to to get out there because we cover so many different styles.
And the British do the British tended to put us as a comedy band. I don't think we were actually a comedy band.
No.
The music was always taken seriously. A lot of the songs are quite serious. But we just don't take ourselves seriously.
Which is fun. And if you look at a lot of the rock bands, they're putting even more ridiculous in their outfits and their stage mannerisms, and some of the fey lyrics as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I would agree.
We kind of didn't play the game, and it made it hard to exploit us, really.
And of course, John Entwistle produced your first record. That must have helped in terms of bringing some, not credibility, but awareness of you as kind of a heavy-hitting band that was going somewhere.
Again, I think that applied more to America, where there was so much respect for the heritage of all that music. People were really, really taken by it. Over here, less so. It's it was quite a cynical age, I think, at that time.
Well, it's 1977.
1977, and it was the Clash had done, no Beatles, no Rolling Stones, 1977 and all this. So, but for me, because The Who were one of my all-time favourite bands, it was a pure joy, and he was great to work with, really great.
Yes, he taught us how to be rock and rollers. I won't go into any more than that.
No, there were great stories, let's say.
Yeah.
So in terms of stories, I mean, you have a connection to Deptford, which was kind of the birthplace or the gestation place of bands like the Dire Straits and Squeeze. I mean, you must have a lot of tales to tell from back then.
One of the great things, 76, 77, I can't remember which. In fact, I think both years we used to do a Crossfields festival, which was organised by the local people. And Crossfields was an old council estate down there, my 1930s council estate, and they'd built a dual carriageway through it. So they moved out all the families with children and moved in lots of young people on a special letting scheme. So they were giving it to artists and musicians and students and things. And we organised, and of course, because of that, it turned into the perfect council estate, because everybody's organised things themselves. And now they weren't going to pull it down, but now they've refurbished it. We had a festival 2 years running, 76, 77, and I think all three of us were playing one year with a little PA on the green outside.
Yeah, tiny little stage in the middle of this.
And the leads coming out of Mark Knopfler's flat, coming down the side of the thing with a long extension lead powering the PA.
And of course, in those days, nobody thought about filming anything, recording anything. I mean, imagine nowadays, you'd have really classy film of it.
Yeah. There's a couple of photos, that's about it.
That's it.
I remember the Gypsy Kids saying, "Oh, but these cymbals, but that metal's worth a bit."
Yeah.
So is there a fabulous documentary where you sort of like revisit your old haunts and talk to some of those protagonists? Is that something that's still in mind?
Well, we're still visiting the old haunts because we've actually been doing the rehearsals down in Deptford.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And I am
close.
kind of working on the prospect of, depending on how the gigs pan out, and I think they'll be fine, and what we can set up. I'm talking to a few people about the possibility of putting together a documentary, because I think it's a good story. Band gets together after 40 years of not working together, and the differences between the two. I've already recorded with an American friend of mine over an hour of interviews. So yeah, I think it'll be a good documentary. Rockumentary, I believe they call it these days.
So the live band is obviously you two guys. Who else is going to be playing?
Well, Richie, who was the bass player, I tried to get him, and he hadn't played bass. He's no interest in music at all. So
Went for another guy called Richard.
Yeah, I got this. The guy, I've got a band called Ronnie and The Rex. It's like a kind of 6-piece soul band, 60s soul band. And so I asked Richard, the bass player, and he was overjoyed because he actually owns Fabulous Poodles records. And then when Bryn, our drummer, said he couldn't do it, we got Pete, So Pete and Richard have worked together with me for the last 15 or so years. So they're locked in, they're really good. So it's going to be
Rehearsals were very good fun.
yeah, and in a way it's kind of good to have new blood in there, because it would have felt like we were going back if it had been all the original members, and instead there's a kind of freshness because they're really enjoying the songs. And
But it's slightly fresh because I can't remember what I played on a lot of them.
no, I can't.
So I'm just playing what's right for the song now.
But you feel,
It's pretty close.
but you feel the spirit of the original band is there, and that's informing the way you're playing.
Yeah, I think the attitude that we had was more important even than the expertise,
And
because
the energy's there.
and the energy, and it's just it's not, again, it's not comedy, but there is a humour to it which I think is nice and which is lacking with a lot of bands these days.
Because you see pictures of bands, you know, the
Yeah.
promo shots. They're all looking miserable and serious these days. You never get anybody smiling in a shot. And I think we stop that.
Yeah,
Let's be fun with it.
yeah.
Let's have fun with it. I mean,
And so the
promo photos, for Pete's sake.
the set you'll be playing, predominantly just songs from the
Yeah.
3 core albums, and
Sure.
any
Well,
ones.
there are a couple of my songs in it for once.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah. A couple of
I
his
know.
solo songs.
Because I've done solo albums and things. So we've dragged out a couple of them.
And
And,
then-
there'll be like 2 or 3 covers, but basically it will be the old stuff, because that's what the people who come along, that's what they want to hear, and I'm happy to play.
So for people that watch this, that want to sort of just gen up a little bit, what are the sort of the few songs that you point people to remind people, here's the kind of the core sound of the band, here's kind of what to expect?
Well, the big hit was Mirror Star. You know, that was a hit in America. And I can never remember which way around it is. The top single was 15 on the album. The single was top 15 and the album was top 20. Or it's the other way round. I can't remember. It's 40 odd years ago. But Mirror Star.
Yeah, they
Bionic
took
Man
to Mirror
was the other-
Star.
was the other big single in America.
Yeah, Bionic Man was a big kind of radio hit.
Turntable hit, I think they call
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And they're fun to play.
And of course there's the Cherry Red box set available as well, if you want to check that out.
Absolutely, yeah. At a very reasonable price.
And also, there's an awful lot on it. I mean, the CDs, 3 packed CDs.
That's excellent, chaps. Well, to remind everyone, because the date has been advertised at another date, but the real and actual date you're
29th of November.
is the 29th of November.
Nell's Jazz and Blues.
It's still a Friday, but it's the 29th.
Yeah.
And the warm up that's happening in Bath is quite soon.
That's
Yes,
this Friday
this
on
Friday.
the 8th of November.
And it'd be worth getting, because the tickets are going a bit for the Nell's gig.
Yeah.
Now, there are left. There's plenty left, but they're going more.
Get in there, kids.
Again, pleasure talking to you, Tony, Bobby. We'll see you out there, and looking forward to possibly new music.
Excellent, excellent.
All the best.
Cheers.